Hello, it's Dr. Mike here. This is for my CIS-2640 Network Security / Security Plus second series on cybersecurity, and this is Topic 2, Operational and Organizational Security. So the topic really reads as it is. We're going to look at different parts of the operation, organization, and some of the threats that come in along with this. So probably the first thing to introduce is the idea of OPSEC. And what we want to do is bring security from not just a security team to being part of every part of every team. So example is, and probably the most place you'll see this first would be your networking. So you have a network engineering team at a corporation, and it's not uncommon for security to definitely be a huge part of that. Security and networking really go hand in hand. But let's say, for example, software development. Security is a part of that. Training does come into play, but you don't always have security testers or security individuals in there. It's sort of put upon the individuals to make sure they do security. So OPSEC really wants to bring security into all parts and ensuring that we use policies and procedures to enhance security, which goes back to the previous topic, which of course is the CIA, the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Those three main pillars. So we uphold that with policy. So a big part of it is security policies. Now I know at the time of this recording in this class, you actually have a security policy lab later. But I'm going to introduce some stuff here now, and I'll probably come back and I'll show you again later some resources you can use to help you with this. I will say this, definitely security policies need to have a couple things. You need to have one, training, or at least some sort of verification. So one, it's got to be either trained or delivered with a bite-sized small chunk. So example is a 5-minute video about social engineering with a 3-question quiz at the end that you can take over and over again. Now what does this do? Even myself, working full-time, like, I gotta take security training. You know, you got a load of stuff going on, I got projects, and I gotta take 20 minutes out of my day and sit down and watch this video and take 3-question quiz. Now, the fact it's a 5-minute video and 3 questions makes it easier to go and say, yeah, I'll knock this out today. Versus, you know, we're gonna have an hour and a half long training session with everybody in one room. So you can see how hard it is just to inject a large amount of security training at one time. So you do it in bite-sized chunks, and also the ability to deliver it some sort of online training with a little clarification at the end has a audit trail saying, yes, you've shown that you took this 5-minute video and you did pass the 3-question quiz. Then later it can be upheld with human resources policies. So again, so let's say you're not supposed to download, do not download, take a 5-minute video, take a 3-question quiz saying I will not download pirate software in the corporation, and I sign something or click something saying I prove that. Well, later on I do that. Me taking the training shows I understood that policy, and HR can now go and uphold you know, some sort of guideline. It could be even suspension, you know, black mark on your record or whatever, but you need to have some sort of way to enforce that, and this has to come from the top down too. So you need like the CIO, CISO saying this is important, these security policies are important. You're mandated as a department to make sure you get 100% by a certain amount of time. So it has to be interwound inside there. So the idea of OPSEC or DevOPSEC, we'll definitely come to this over and over again, is to make sure that things are in play. So chapter talks about password policy, definitely one of the first policies you run across. You know, password policy is definitely the easiest one to come across. We've all seen it. Even when you sign for a free account somewhere maybe, or you sign for an account somewhere, there'll be a policy saying, you know, the password for this site had to be XYZ, over 12 characters, upper and lowercase, small and special character. So that's a policy. Now we're going to talk about also controls, and we can put in controls about that. We talked about that with layered defense last topic, which example would be we have a policy saying our passwords have to be XYZ. for strong passwords. And then we implement a Active Directory policy or a policy within our server systems or whatever our cloud systems that enforces that, as well as maybe multi-factor authentication. So, so we can implement them. We can implement them this way. So we can have a plan for security. We can have policies, procedures, and guidelines. But we can also deliver how we're going to deliver those, and also we can monitor those. So auditing is very important. So this goes back to auditing, and we can evaluate effectiveness. So controls, and I may have talked this already before. There are different types of controls: directives, preventatives, and detective controls. So again, you want policies and procedures. You want preventive controls, which is strong passwords, multi-factor authentication, make sure firewalls are used in certain parts of our network. This goes into design of our software, design of our networks. Corrective controls. This is where we have our procedures and manuals in place. And we need HR to come in, and also audits. We talk about in the course, IDSs, auditing, very important aspect. Logs. I can't say how important logs are. Logs. That is going to be that's lifeblood of your forensics part of your cybersecurity, and this is the lifeblood of your auditing trail. So logging itself is a pretty big thing. And we're going to talk about that also later. Not just also these controls, we have physical controls in place too, right? Physical barriers, fences, man traps, gate guards, walls. And so we actually have part of a layered security could become physical. Now physical, really, you can have almost an entire layered security model for that. I'm not going to go and mark that up. But it's a huge deal. So definitely want to make sure you have experts in that area. Or at least have expertise, some expert guidance or best practices you can use to ensure those are being followed. Environmental issues, fire suppression, electromagnetic, HVAC, UPS. And we think about cybersecurity, we think about the attacker. What about Mother Nature, the biggest attacker of all? Power outages, flooding, fires. So we're going to talk about this more in depth when we look at business continuity later in this course. So there'll be another lecture about business continuity, and backups, definitely one of them. I'll say this again, backup, backup, backup. And I'll probably say this again too. There's a good thing about backups is a 3-2-1 backup, 3 total copies of a file, 2 local, 1 offsite. The 2 local is the original copy, 1 copy maybe on an external drive, for example. And it has to be automatic, not something, every so often we back up the stuff when we get a chance or when we think about it. It's got to be automatic. And now with ransomware being a big threat, we need to have immutable backups also, which means backups that cannot be changed, because a lot of times ransomware will go out and actually go into your backup system and actually encrypt and ransom that stuff too. So you need immutable backups that can be restored. So, and the last thing else about backups and all this stuff here, HVAC, UPS, it's all great unless you test it. Unless I go out once a month on a weekend and we test our data, our data center's power backup system, make sure everything switches over correctly. Unless you physically test it, you don't want to find out during an actual fire, flood, hurricane that we missed something. So same with backups. You want to do a test restore. Unless you can verify you can restore a backup. So I know I'm getting a little tangent there on that, but a very important part of this. So location of equipment, printers, monitors, things like that. Dumpster diving, very important. How do we get rid of stuff? It's probably going to be inside here. If it's not in this chapter, I know it's. I think it's mentioned in this chapter if I remember correctly, and also it's going to be mentioned later. Dumpster diving, how do we dispose of something? Proper disposal is very important. So role of people. This is really the biggest thing. People in security. I mean, we need to make sure that you can do the best job at securing your network, at securing everything. But unless your people are well trained, things will get through. And this is what social engineering does. Social engineering actually attacks the person. And we do this via phishing. And how it works, and one example is we had this here. We have this layered defense, right? We have our DMZ out here. Of course, email's got to be part of this, our email server. But we have, we have proper firewalls. Internal, we have a firewall on each side of this, with another firewall here, and then this, we have a segregated network. It only allows certain connections in from this subnet. So you have, fantastic layered subnetting monitoring. We have IDSs in place, both maybe here, and intrusion detection systems here and out here. Web app firewalls and so on, even have endpoint protection. That's actually a key thing here is endpoint protection. But let's say we have some here at this client's thing. But again, social engineering, why you attack the person? Because this layered defense is great, but you have to let something in and out. For example, we need to allow port 443 and port 80, right? We need to allow that traffic in and out. We have to. That's it's lifeblood. That's HTTP and HTTPS, by the way. So it has to be able to come in to here, also get to our email server. It has to be able to get to our client. Our end users, our managers, our workers need to be able to use the web. You may need to access external resources. They need to be able to access email, talk to clients, get help, and so on. So unless we block everything, which you can't do. So the most secure computer in the world is the one that's turned off, encased in concrete, locked up in a metal vault, and sunk in the bottom of the ocean. And even then, there's probably a way to get to it, the data on it. So we need to allow these channels in, and this user needs to have access to the subnet because they have a resource on here they need to get to. So social engineering and phishing specifically are very effective because they rely upon attacking the person. If someone does not realize that, oh yeah, I just got an email saying there's a brand new file out here for me. Maybe it's, oh yeah, cool, I get this $120 gift certificate from Amazon for a corporate function I did. Well, again, this is all fake and phishing, but they can download. Nothing's going to stop them downloading this. Or maybe going to the page itself, hooks their web browser. And even with the best endpoint protection, web browser itself is allowed to run JavaScript. JavaScript again allows access to this local computer here, and it puts on a keylogger. It gets enough information where they get the ID and password. And that might be all they need. Or maybe installs a remote access Trojan, which allows calls back out and opens a pipe in. Now, IDS might find that, might not. That's a problem. There's all those what ifs. And it only takes that one time for someone to click on something, open something, and then allows them to go and get in, and then it gives them access to this subnet, and the subnet, maybe they get a rat on here, and then gives them access to the database. So we saw some of the same things with the target attack. That being, we had, let's just sort of do a really bad Venn diagram. We had a third-party HVAC vendor, I believe it was, that the subnet that they're allowed to access breached into, or was actually allowed access into, what we would call the payment system. So some improper subnetting, they are breached, and this is sort of side channel attack. I'm not going to attack you individually, I'm going to attack your third-party vendor. They have really weak security, and they have a little too much access in here. So we break those walls down by giving a third party that we trust. They get phished, social engineered, and then someone their access lets someone in. So we saw this already. Case study of that, of course, is going to be your target attack. Definitely a good one there. So social engineering is a huge thing, phishing, and you can imagine the chapters will talk about shoulder surfing and so on, piggybacking. Oh, there's dumpster diving, definitely a good one there. And security hoaxes too. Hoaxes are definitely a big one, and that plays upon the fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Again, I'm reflecting back on our previous lecture, but it comes up again. That's what social engineering plays on, is that FUD to make you maybe take a hoax, something that's not really an issue, and make it a problem. Big one of that is when a security researcher finds something, and now we see in the news a lot. Security researchers have found the WP2 has a critical flaw in the handshake, which allows researchers to crack all Wi-Fi. Of course, the news gets it, and you newsify it, which means to make a story, make it a good clickbait story. All Wi-Fi is not hackable. Well, so take a second and look. Wait a minute, a security researcher hasn't released the actual attack code yet, and they're talking to the main vendors: Apple, Cisco, Wi-Fi, Microsoft, so on. Wi-Fi vendors for a fix have found a way to do a zero-key insertion into a specific Wi-Fi process with a very specific attack, which is very hard to pull off. In other words, maybe inserting a man in the middle, router at a place, and then snuffing another router out. Very intricate attack, but it's still a valid attack. So unless you read the details, you can look at, oh my God, a Wi-Fi is hackable. Well, if I'm going to do a hoax, I'm going to say, well, a hoax is maybe, well, yeah, it's all hackable. I have a fix for that. You need to download and install this on your router to fix it ASAP. And yeah, I'm from Cisco. I'm from whatever, one of the network vendors, or maybe I'm from your ISP. I'll play upon that as an attacker, get you to install something, which again, as you saw before in my thing there, a lot. That's it. I open the door for you. So good stuff here in the chapter about that. Hoax is definitely one of them. And there's some stuff here, best practices on unauthorized software install. So let's talk about security awareness. Let's talk about training. So first off, roles and responsibilities. Again, there has to be some kind of they call it the O level or the E level, executive level, CIO, CTO, CSO, and so on, CISO. It's very important you have this role, what do you want to title it, someone who has the authority to push down this awareness training or certain, or say, yeah, these security policies and procedures need to be followed. And if you try to push it from the bottom up or from across, it's not going to be where it work. You're a security engineer. You're not part of the development team. You're there to help them out, but you try pushing security onto them, it's going to be like, yeah, we'll look at that. There's no authority in place. So authority has to go along with the security role. It has to come from top down a lot of times. So a couple of big things here with this chapter, and we'll just put in general with the organizational security is, so first off, where do you start, right? Now, I mentioned NIST in my previous lecture. If you remember, haven't watched or forgot, NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology, to get that right. National Institute of Standards and Technology, huge part of the U.S. Department of Commerce, a lot of stuff, but there is a framework, so cybersecurity framework. And if you look at version 1.1 here, where do I start? Where do I look for stuff? Where do I begin? Maybe you're a brand new security manager. Where do I start with this company that it's up and coming? It's a brand new company, or it's a company that has had lackadaisical or very little security work done, and they've been bitten. Unfortunately, see what happens. Something happens. Now we need to step up our security. Okay, you're now in charge. Fix us. How are we insecure? That's a pretty big question. So to help answer that is you can take something like this framework document, and you can basically help you manage, understand your risks. I'm not going to get into risk analysis in this lecture. We actually have an entire lecture upon that. There's actually a chapter on risk assessment, vulnerability assessment. But again, you have resources here. You can sort of help set up, figure out your risk management, or even cherry pick through this thing and say, okay, you know what? Okay, what questions can I start asking? What kind of asset management do we have in place? What's our organizational mission? What's our governance? Do we have any governance we have to follow? Governance being Sarbanes-Oxley, HIPAA, PCI, We have any strategies in place, and you even get down to the nitty gritty. Okay, what sort of information records do we have? What kind of data do we have? What are we trying to protect? So you can use this as a sort of a very long checklist, but as a way to sort of ask questions. How are we doing monitoring right now? So this can be a very helpful framework, and I'm going to look at it again, probably more in depth, specifically with risk assessment and vulnerability assessment. It's a huge part of that. But a part of best practices too, and of course training people with roles in development, with roles, security roles, not in software development, all roles, is let me introduce you to SANS. SANS.org. SANS is a fantastic, it's a cybersecurity training resource. We'll see this also later. At the time of this recording, there is a lab in this class where you're directed to use some resources from SANS, and they have a lot of good resources. Templates, the reading room's got all kinds of stuff, fantastic stuff, but there's posters, cheat sheets, tip of the day. There's training. There's some very intensive training. I've taken myself 2 SANS courses, one on web app pen testing, and another one on Java code security. They'll come out and give training. They got some top-notch trainers, but also you can go to there just for training information, courses. And again, there's a nice framework here. And it's nice, you can find best practices and figure out how to employ these. So again, you're not starting from the blank page. How to manage your team, see group purchasing, see resources here. Reading room's fantastic. I use this a lot. You can find some really good stuff here too. Webcast tools, lots of good stuff here. I mean, SIF Workstation, they have actual tools you can use. If you get into SIF Workstation, for example, this is for forensics. Blog, posters, cheat sheets, top 20 program errors, security policy reports, again, vulnerability recaps. So a lot of times you're given tasks as a security engineer, professional, to help boil something down and deliver the information to somebody who's not either technically versed or technically versed but not security versed. So different levels of audience, and sometimes this information helps you boil it down and deliver the best information you can to your audience to either enact some change, which is very important, which comes into the fact back to this chapter. Enacting change, which is awareness. Maybe it's a threat, maybe it's an issue. So SANS, we'll look at it again probably. So we talked about NIST before, talked about it again, NIST, and now let's talk about SANS. Another third party you can look at is SANS for a lot of information. And again, we will talk about that definitely more often here. So this wraps up our chapter on roles of people in security, both as a target and hopefully as the actor of change to better security for your organization. So that concludes topic 2. Thank you for watching.